I'd like to call the Town Council meeting to order, April 2nd. Let's stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. First order of business is to approve the minutes, March 5th, 2018, the regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. March 19th, 2018, the work session. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. March 19th, 2018, the regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. And we have an amendment on the approval of the minutes in February 5th, 2018. It was a correction on the votes on item 19. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Two things on the showcase tonight. First, we're going to ask the town manager if he could address the townwide reevaluations.
Thank you, Madam President. As many of the residents know, the town of Narragansett is going through a revaluation, a statistical revaluation presently, and I'd like to go over the historical nature of that, how it came about to this. There have been a lot of questions directed to my office and to members of the town council.
Thank you.
The state of Rhode Island, approximately 15 years ago, used to reval properties in all 39 cities and towns every 9 years. It was changed at that time to 3 times every 3-year period. 2 statistical revaluations and 1 full or actual revaluation. A statistical revaluation is when they do not come and inspect your home. The reval is based on recent sales in the area that you live. A full or actual revaluation is when they come to your home, the company that is hired, and they go through the improvements you've made and the structure itself. The last time Narragansett had, so for 2017 is when this was initiated, this last statistical reval. The last statistical was in 2014. The last full was in 2011. On February 6, 2017, a motion went before an agenda item went before this town council here to vote on a revaluation company, and by a 5-0 vote, the Northeast Reval Company was picked by the council that's sitting as I'm speaking to right now. Prior to that, 2005 to 2017, the company that did the revaluations for Narragansett was Vision Appraisal. On December 31st, 2017, the statistical revaluation was complete, and all the data was given to the tax assessor, David Doltz, who was our new tax assessor that took over shortly prior to that. The 2017 reval went up, the values of the properties in Narragansett went up approximately 9.5% cumulative. The residential properties went up approximately 10%. The commercial properties approximately 5 to 6%. The town of Narragansett had $4.8 billion in value of properties. That include 11,000 properties in this town. That number should go up to approximately $5 billion in value of total properties in the town of Narragansett. The tax levy is approximately $50 million for the amount of properties that we have in this town. There is $240 million of tax-exempt properties in the town of Narragansett. Part of letters went out about 2 weeks ago to the property owners And this is where the confusion started. So in speaking with the tax assessor so that we would fully transparent, it was his idea to have informal hearings, to have property owners come to the town hall and voice any concerns they have over the assessments that they received. The numbers that came in were the 7-8% range, all the way up to one I heard of 33% in the Briggs Farm area of a piece of property that had gone up. That was on the high end. To date, there were 196 taxpayers came in to this informal hearing, 184 residential, 12 commercial, to discuss with Northeast Reval Company on on any discrepancies they thought they might have, or what they thought the value should be of their property. I sat in on several of these interviews. They last about 15 minutes in length. And the reason I thought it would be a good idea to discuss this tonight is because there is a lot of misconception out there. There was a theme of a couple of these taxpayers that this reval was triggered by the homestead exemption. Right. That because of the homestead, this triggered an automatic revaluation of the property. There was also some misconception about, they listed I have 3 bedrooms in my home, but I really only have 2. One is an office. Or they would come in and show 5 or 6 different properties that they thought was similar to their home, but was really different. One would be a Cape, one would be a raised ranch, one would be a colonial, whatever. So these are all things that came into play that Mr. Doltz has to look at and evaluate. I will say that if you have a town like, there were 11 towns that currently are going through a reval in the state of Rhode Island. The towns are Woonsocket, Pawtucket, Middletown, Foster, Newport, Tiverton, East Greenwich, Cranston, Barrington, Exeter, and Narragansett. The state does that on purpose, where they stagger approximately 1/3 of the towns on any given year. If you look at the one closest to Narragansett, Middletown, similar dynamics of this town with waterfront, property values, population, so forth. Their revaluation went up on an average of 15% on a residential property, whereas Narragansett's was 9.5% to 10%. So we're not really that different than any other town. Mr. Doltz, the tax assessor, is in the audience today, and I'll bring him up in a minute. But there is recourse for any taxpayer that disagrees with the revaluation. And the first thing he or she could do is come for the informal hearing. And we encourage that, because if there's a pattern of certain neighborhoods or certain areas that are coming in that they think their values are not in line, that would be something that the tax assessor would look at. The second recourse they could have is a formal hearing when they actually get the tax bill. And obviously the third recourse would be to go to Superior Court if you really cannot come to an agreement or you do not agree with what the valuation is of your property. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. David Doltz, the tax assessor. He could come to the podium, maybe answer any further technical questions the council might have.
I just wanted to ask about the hearing times. I took off from your notes. It said 3/28 to 4/18. Available hearing times are Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, Tuesday and Thursday, 10 to 6. Is that still accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, just in case any of the taxpayers want to come, that's the sort of schedule. Hi, David.
Good evening,
Nice
Madam
to see you.
President and members of the council.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes, like the town administrator said, we encourage everyone to come into an informal hearing. Any concerns or questions they have, it's a good opportunity for them to speak to the revaluation company, who will take all these concerns and questions and summarize them, and then I will review them with the reval company. And it allows us the opportunity to identify problem areas, whether it's a style, whether it's a neighborhood. It's really important because, as you probably aware, my office couldn't handle 200-300 appeals or informal hearings. And one other thing I'd like to mention that the town administrator touched on was education. One of the things I do, my approach is to explain to taxpayers when I have an opportunity to meet with them, talk with them. And I have been going up and meeting with many of the people that have come in for informal hearings and thank them for that. But I take the time to explain the process to them because it's a process that everybody's entitled to. Informal hearings are informal hearings. They can cut down on the amount of work that my office has. But then again, if they're still not satisfied, they can appeal to me within 90 days of the first tax payment. I will review it, many times meet with them, go through their property, and then ultimately give them a decision. And then they have the opportunity to appeal my decision, even if it's somewhat favorable, if they still feel that they're not satisfied with that. And this process takes a while. I've done this in several towns. It's working with taxpayers and really gaining the confidence of both the town officials and the taxpayers that I'm here to listen to them. They might not always get what they want, but if they can convince me that it's a valid point, it's a valid point, and we'll address it one way or the other. So with
Thank
that-
you. Any questions from the council?
Yeah, I got a question. Dave, thank you. Picked a heck of a time to be signed on with this outfit, but statistically, with your experience previous, are there people looking to, or an appeal process? Is it average, the people who are, 200, where you said there's 200, for how many homes? I mean, are we right in line with the statistically average for each community to have a complaint after an assessment? A new assessment,
yes.
a new eval.
Yeah, I
So
feel,
we're right in line, right?
Yeah, I feel we are.
Yeah, okay.
Most people are aware that the real estate market's been very active.
Right.
Supply is down, demand is up. We take that all into consideration when we're setting the final values.
And it must be understood that the mill rate will be substantially dropped because of the higher assessments. Is that correct?
Depending on where the budget comes in, yeah.
Right, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Any other questions? Nope. Thanks for informing us and the public. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jim. Next, I just want to ask if the solicitor will give us an update as much as he can on the negotiations with the library.
Good evening. Well, I can't say too much because we're still negotiating. I know there's concern over common area charges. So just to give you an idea of the big items that we're talking about, making up the majority of the expenses, would be electricity, snow removal, landscape services, and landscape supplies. Those are some of those items constitute the majority of the CAM charges, with several others included. So we continue to negotiate. I've had conversations with counsel for Gilbane last week, and looking for the most recent proposal from them this week. I think we're making good headway. And really, at this point, I really can't say a lot more than that.
Any questions?
No, I think we're good.
Not from Mark, but question to all of us. I know that in the past that several members of the council had actually reached out to the Gilbane Corporation to talk. Has anybody done that recently, or are we?
I have not.
We're good. We're good.
Okay.
I have not.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, we're going to move on to open forum. And when you come up, please state your name and your address, and you'll have your 3 minutes. Richard?
Hi, Richard Vangerich, 55 Osceola. I'm going to make one more plea for an allocation of at least 1/2 of the 2016-2017 surplus of revenue minus expenditures to the OPEB trust fund. We must try to do with OPEB as we are doing with pensions. Make 100% of the annual required computation. With OPEB under control, our taxes in the long run will be much lower. Also, employees and their unions should join in this quest for their long-term security. The recent federal tax changes limiting local and state taxes to $10,000 on Schedule A will greatly change the views of moderately wealthy people who live in Narragansett towards these two taxes. Since the federal government is no longer paying 1/3 of these taxes. You can say, well, who cares when I'm taxed? I get it 1/3 off my federal tax. I don't care as much. Within a year or two, people will catch on. And these very influential people will be much more concerned about their state and local taxes. Hopefully, in the process, they will get excited about the long-run issues on controlling OPEB costs. But the taxpayer is going to change. Once moderately wealthy taxpayers within the range of $150,000 to $300,000 income finally realize that their life has changed with the changes in the federal tax law and in the state tax law, which is even worse, they're going to be up in arms about state and local taxes. And these are the people that have great influence.
Thank you. Stanley?
Stan Wojciechowski in Narragansett. First, I want to commend the financial staff of the town. At meetings, I've heard that typical accounting-type people, they want to maintain a very acceptable surplus. They want us to make sure that we have the money to do what we need to do. And they're very conservative about this, so they make sure we have enough. They're worried that we might be short of money. So, of course, government itself, I guess, established 10+% surplus you must have. And I'm not so sure that's a benefit, because as we assume we have a surplus, near the end of a budget cycle, we end up using it all the time. This is no longer a surplus, but it's dependent upon to do some of the extra spending that may not be necessary. And then when I saw in the paper that there was a 4% increase planned for Narragansett, and I showed you that the Social Security actually determined that the COLA was 2%. And here we are in a town thinking of 4%. So we're really getting aggressive in spending here. So I wanted to offer a solution. We need to minimize this surplus. We don't have a surplus. You shouldn't have a surplus. And what we should do probably is find some financial institution that would fund us some money for emergency for a year. If we have an emergency happen for a year, we'll find the bank says, okay, we're going to give you a 1-year loan, 2-3% government, we know you're good. So we establish a short-term loan availability. Substitute that for the surplus. Because the surplus gives us that feeling of spending. Whereas if we had a loan, that would be more reasonable. We got a loan to pay. We overspent. We needed a loan. I think that would make us financially more astute in what we're doing and would minimize the spending and stay within our budget. And I say that I think with our staff and the people running the school and the town, they are so experienced, been here so long, that they don't make a mistake in their judgment of what they're going to spend. They are pretty good in figuring out what they need. And I don't think we need that surplus. That surplus is needed if you have inexperienced people making a bad judgment call on money, and we don't have that problem. So we must reduce the surplus rather than increase our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Anybody else wishing to speak? Karen?
I did have my hand up to address the subject of library. I don't know whether you didn't see me or didn't
It was a
have public-
presentation he was giving out. I wasn't taking questions from the audience. He was just
Okay.
giving updates.
You know, you all know what busy work is when you used to get assigned busy work in school to keep you busy. Sometimes I feel like that's what the committees in town are assigned. I sadly don't feel the town council really listens to, like, for instance, the library, because we brought up so many points so many times and repeated them. You all appear to be intelligent people. And I begin to wonder why we have to repeat the same things again and again and again. And it really makes me sadly wonder about the commitment of the town council to the library. And people keep coming up with a other idea. They're trying to outthink it. But have they done their homework and listened to the report that the required librarian advisor has given us, such as the acquisition of the liquor store, which is part of it? I think, sadly, that a lot of you throw up smoke screens, and it's very frustrating not to make considerable progress after 2 years. And now we're entering into the next period of the next election. And people pay more for their houses in Narragansett than they do for the public library. And it's pretty sad. Now we're talking about sprinkler parks, for goodness sakes. I mean, who are you here for? The tourists that come in the summer? Or are you here for the residents that are here year-round? And also the lack of senior activities. There should be many more senior activities with the number of seniors in town. And I know they said the South Kingston, but what about the seniors that don't have cars? And what about the sense of building a community within a community? I spent 19 years in a Jesuit community, and I learned a lot from the Jesuits about building community. And I think there's a lot this town could learn about building community.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else wishing to speak? Paul?
Good evening, Town Council.
Just state your name and address.
Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Windward Circle. So in 2016, a lot of you were asked, will you vote for the library? In 2018, you'll be asked, why did you overspend for the library? We've gone from a $5.8 million bond to a $7.2 million expenditure. The CAM fees, and Patrick, I'm really happy you were doing surveys of $38,000 a year. If you multiply that by 30 years, that's another $1.1 million. At least, without any cost of living or inflation. And then, of course, the library, the liquor store for $400,000. 5,800 people didn't vote for a liquor store, they voted for a library, right? So it almost seems like we have to rebond this and bring it back out to the voters. Or we're going to risk the same overspending that we had with the athletic field. So I would urge you, instead of thinking about this as $38,000 a year, as over another $1 million. I don't have time for that, so thank you very much. Please consider that.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else wishing to speak? Gloria?
Gloria Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road, Narragansett. It just interests me that...
Gloria, can you speak up a little bit?
Sure. It's interesting to me that I am on the Board of Trustees of the library, and there is a lot of information that people bring up here, and I'd like to know where they get those figures from, because we don't have those figures. So people come up, throw out figures which have, I believe, no basis. We don't know about any of that stuff. And as Mark pointed out tonight, we don't even know what the CAM fees are going to be yet. He's still negotiating on them. And people are beating this horse to death. Our library project has been going on for quite a long time. Never has the Board of Trustees said, well, now it's going to be 7 point whatever million. I just like the people who aren't here to know that these figures that keep coming up and being spoken about don't have a foundation. And people take that as truth. And so I really would appreciate it if, when the time comes, that the true figures come out and they're made public, and we can kind of get rid of all these false figures that are floating around all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing no hands, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Do I have any council members that would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? No? No? Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do
So
I
moved.
have, excuse me?
So moved.
Can you speak on an item? No, we're in the middle of voting on it. On a consent agenda? Come on up, Stanley, before we vote. I'm not really sure you can do that, so can you tell me what item you're looking at?
I'm just looking at item number 6.
Yeah, I don't think really,
So I
the
can't
Robert's
talk
rules, I
about
don't think
anything on a
you
consent. So
can,
the
I'll
public's
defer to
not
the,
allowed to talk about this, anything on a consent
wait a
agenda?
minute, wait a minute. Can he pull from the consent agenda? I believe not, but I need,
I'd like to pull 6. How's that?
okay,
Let's pull 6.
there we go. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of pulling 6?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 6. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0, motion passes. Motion 6 on the consent agenda. A motion to award the bid for the purchase of one new gravelly lawn mower for the Parks and Rec Department to the lowest bidder, North Fork Power Equipment, Inc., in the amount of $7,575. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And
Second.
discussion.
I just wanted to stand up and
Nice job.
I looked at that, and I just wanted to commend. I wanted to commend because there was 3 quotes taken to get this number. So we did get a minimum cost in the purchase of this tractor.
Thank you for
and
the-
some of the others were $7,000 and $9,000. So I wanted to just continue to commend people to continue to get the 3 quotes at all times.
Thank you, Stanley,
very
and we
much.
appreciate
It's an
that.
example of good financial management.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is the law that you have to have 3, but it was great that you came up for something positive. We appreciate that.
Steve,
Okay,
good job. Stanley approves.
all those in favor of motion 6? Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
Good.
Moving on to the new business, number 9, a motion to adopt a proclamation recognizing Arbor Day 2018 and the importance of the trees in Narragansett. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do-
Second.
Discussion. This is recognition on April 27th, and I believe this is from Mike DeChico and Mike DeLuca. Any discussion? I think it's wonderful to have a day of recognition, so thank you for that. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0, motion passes. Motion 10, a motion to approve a contract for the land acquisition consult services with Kathleen Wainwright to assist the Land Conservancy Trust in seeking funds and conducting negotiations for open space acquisition in the amount not to exceed $10,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have discussion? So From the council? Any discussion?
Is this for one specific parcel, or is this like in general?
So.
Is this what I was earlier?
Yeah, we had
I
an
think I
executive
know where-
before. I just don't want to divulge too much information, so I'm looking at the solicitor because it's still in negotiation, so I'll defer to him to talk about that before we address Tom.
It's for several. It's developed the sort of the capacity for the land trust to be able to acquire properties. State his name.
Okay, and your name is?
Thomas Rogers, I'm sorry. I'm the chairman of the Land Conservancy Trust.
Okay, so go ahead, Tom.
No, Kathleen, in her previous career with the Nature Conservancy, Kathleen was involved with acquiring over 400 properties, one of which was Whale Rock, which I know that Terry Fleming and Mike DeLuc were very much involved with. She brings unique skills. We've worked with Kathleen over the last several months under a very limited purchase order and have already benefited significantly from her advice and counsel. And we really need and look forward to having her help and consultation in the acquisition of new properties.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on the motion? Seeing no hands, anybody else from the council?
So we were briefed on this in executive session at the land trust level, and then what was the consensus of you guys, since I was unable to attend the council?
I'm good with it.
I was great with it, too.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we're ready for a vote. It's for the $10,000 for the consultant. All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
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 5-0, motion passes. Motion 11, a motion to accept the donation of parcels of land identified as Assessor Plat T, lots 56, 57, 58, 59 on Rhode Island Avenue from the Armenian Educational Foundation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion. I just want you to speak to a clear title.
Yeah, I think any agreement to accept the property should be subject to a thorough title exam to ensure that we are getting free and marketable title.
So, Mark, we could vote on it with that.
I move to amend the motion to be subject to marketable title.
And I'll second that. Anybody from the council wishing to speak on? Anybody from the public?
So this is great because we're getting a donation of land. We're trying to protect open space. We're not spending any taxpayer money. So this is a good.
Always did like those Armenians.
A good step forward.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
Thank you, Tom. Good job.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Did everybody vote on it?
I did. Yeah.
5-0,
Yeah.
motion passes.
It's not coming out.
Number 12, a motion to approve or reject the expenditure of $300,000 in the capital improvement budget for the spring of 2017 to install the HVAC system in Kinney Bungalow. So there's before we even put the motion on the floor, it's a two-part question. It's the $30,000, as you all remember, for the study, and then the remaining money for the actual installation. So do I have a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Well, so there's only one motion.
It's one, so we'll have
So
to
I'm going to
amend
amend it.
Do I have a
in
second on that motion?
I'll second.
All right, for
And
discussion.
then I'd like to amend it to include the expenditure of $30,000
For the study.
for the study.
So I don't know where the council is. We've talked about this in the past.
If required, I should say, because I've read the packet, and if it's required, I think it is outdated by a couple of years, according to your package.
It is, but the thing that I want to talk about too is we had asked Jim as a council a while ago to take a look at all of our venues that we have for purposes of renting out, to have a report in. So I know, Susan, you wrote in here that we've been waiting 3 years for the vote, but I almost think right now is premature, because we're still waiting for Jim to report back to us about our venues, whether or not we want to have one person manage all of them. We do not know right now how the Kinney Bungalow stands for renting out. So I think we need to wait to hear back from Jim for what that number is before we can even move forward. There's no harm in waiting a little bit longer. We've waited 3 years.
So again, this came on as a request of
Understand.
the land
Understand.
trust. So I want you to come up, Tom, because I know it's been something you wanted the council to make a decision on. I think the organization or reorganization of the management is a little bit different than this particular motion that you've been struggling with at the land trust level and the council level. So why don't you speak to that? And then we can make a decision if people are ready to vote.
But before even that, though, you know, Matt and I sit in the land trust, and Tom had not come to us to say that this was an issue that they wanted to bring on. So I guess I'm quite not sure why this was done in this manner.
Would you like to speak to it, Tom?
Well, last year, we were asked to deal with it during the budget cycle because there was an amount of money put into the budget for last year, but there was concern that the land trust really hadn't looked at it recently, so we were asked to do a screening analysis to make a recommendation, adding it to the bungalow. And so last summer, as you remember, we spent a lot of time looking into it. And
Tom, can you speak into that a little bit louder?
It was based upon a memo that Jeff Cesarine wrote to Steve Wright based upon the results of a consultant doing a feasibility study. But unfortunately, it was in October 19th, 2015. And that memo contemplated a two-step process, as you mentioned. First was to develop the final plans and specifications so that the object can go out for bid. And then once it's back for bid, then at that point in time, the town would make the decision whether they wanted to spend the money. The estimate in the memo for the plans and specifications was $30,000. We think that might be higher because it's 2 or 3 years old. And also, the total budget figure was estimated to be about $300,000. I also think that's going to be low for 2 reasons, one of which it's old, but also I don't know whether there's a contingency in that number or not. Now, we voted 6-3 on July 20th of 2017 to do that, and our motion at that point was to spend the $30,000 or more, depending upon updated pricing, to hire an appropriate professional to develop the final design plan and specification, and then go out to bid for installation of the HVAC system for Kenny Bungalow. So it's been a long time. So my question to the president of the board of the town council a while ago was, well, we've never heard back from town as where this money was. I know we're now in a new budget cycle. I think this is a matter of information that the land trust needed to know where we stood with that issue.
So I have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as I reviewed the packet, first thing is this was budgeted in this year's, so this current fiscal year, so it's already a budgeted item at 200.
There was $55,000 as the end of 2016. There's an additional $250 put into it in fiscal year 2017. Okay.
So that went through the budget process and it was reviewed.
Yes, we already proved that.
Right.
Second question is so the study, was that a required item back when you were doing the budgeting to make sure that it was appropriately sized, et cetera? Was that budgeted?
The feasibility study was authorized by town council.
So that's already in the budget as well for this fiscal year?
That was already spent.
Separate line item, et cetera?
No,
whatever?
the current 30,000? I don't think so.
No, not the current 30, the original fee.
The original
whatever.
one has been, was budgeted and paid for.
Last spring,
Okay.
right? Yes.
And then the last question I have, so we're still going to rent the bungalow this year, right?
Yes.
It's not being taken off the market for,
That's correct.
okay. So, I mean, those are my 3 main questions, and, I mean, I'm a fan of making sure that whatever we own is actually, up to, par of what we, I mean, it's not going away, we're not selling the bungalow anytime soon, correct? I think I put this in an email to you, right? So,
It's not my mandate, it's land trust.
so, and then procedurally, I made an amendment. Did we have to,
So we'll have
did
to-
anybody second my
I'll
amendment?
second it. We'll have to decide the $30,000 for the
That's-
study and then the implementation of the HVAC, right?
I would recommend if you do that, would be to amend it just to approve the $30,000.
I mean, I
more.
don't really need to rush into, I know it's budgeted, but I don't need to rush into doing the HVAC, but I definitely want to, I mean, if the money is there for the study, and it might be different now, I have no problem
Well,
with that, but.
Right, the money is there for the expenditure. I'll defer to others
Yep.
about the actual budgeting board, but I would recommend just dealing one step for this motion would be to do the study. It may cost $30,000, it may cost more. Cesarine defer to Jeff Cesarine on that. And then once you have that, then it'll take a while to go out to bid for that RFP. You'll have time, And then when you authorize the RFP to perform that study for $30 or
Sure.
more $1,000. When you get that back, which is going to take a while, then at that point in time, you make a decision whether you want to go forward with the
That makes
That's-
sense to me to do a
that's
study.
perfect.
and
Thank you,
not-
Tom.
I mean, that
Thank
just
you.
makes sense to me.
But
Okay,
what,
so
but what about the point that we have authorized Jim, we've asked Jim as a council to take a look at this, rather than spending the money, why don't we just wait to hear back from Jim about what the town feels that our properties are best to do for the town? Why not we're spending too much money, people, we're always just like spend, spend, spend. Let's think about this a little bit more. I mean, do we need to do this? And we just need to wait a little bit more for Jim. He's been working on it for a while. When do you anticipate having the information for us?
Yeah, I'm not sure, oh, sorry. Go ahead, she asked you a
So,
question.
first of all, we're on this motion for.
I
do we
understand,
wanna-
Susan, but it's a simple question.
So,
It's when will
hold
Jim
on,
have that?
hold on,
No,
hold on.
Susan, stop with the gaveling. When will Jim have the
Okay,
information? We asked
right
for a while
now-
ago.
Point of order, we're talking about amending a motion for the $30,000. That's what we're talking about. That's the motion before us. That's what you are interested in. Correct, Chair of the Land Trust? That's what you'd like to?
Right,
Thank
but-
you. So.
but Susan,
so
we're
hold
also
on, Jill.
looking
I'll
about
let you
s-
speak in a minute. I just
Susan, we're
want to.
looking about spending $30,000.
I
We've already
understand,
asked the
Jill.
town manager to take a look at
I
our
understand.
venues.
So what is your pleasure, council? Do you want, we have a motion for the 30,000. Is there a second?
Oh, well,
Or you put it on, right? You amended
I
it?
amended the motion. I don't
Is there
need,
a-
I don't,
I second it.
already.
Or is there discussion for the 30,000 for the study?
no, I'm in favor of spending the money to study whether or not the Kinney bungalow needs, or whatever the size, I think if it's needed, I think then we do the study to make sure it's done appropriately and you put the project out to bid. I also understand where Jill's coming from, and I think I responded to the town manager with a note in that regard, and I asked where we stood with that. I do think it's two separate discussions, and that's fine. This
Perfect.
discussion tonight is based on the land trust meetings over time. It's been a budgeted item, and I think we just, should move forward with the study. I'm not necessarily
the
in favor
study.
of spending the money for the air conditioning tonight.
Correct.
That's my
Fine,
comment.
that's fine. Any other comments from the council?
The
Any other?
motion
take care of the
really
motion.
probably should have been on more like in the August timeframe after we voted as a land trust. The land trust was split on this. There were different points of view, concerns about fiscal responsibility were brought into play since Kinney is losing money. We just had a speaker talk about the surplus from last year. So you have surpluses from the prior year when you don't spend the money that you budget. We budgeted the money for the heat and AC at Kinney. Things change. That's how you save taxpayer money, is you don't spend every last penny that's budgeted when you look at something more closely after you've set the budget. So I wouldn't want to spend the 30. I don't see if we have, based on what we've learned to the land trust, based on, I was one of the people who was in, it was a 6-3 vote. I was one of the no votes that didn't want
I
to
voted
move
yes
forward.
for the record.
But bottom line is, a venue that's not really gaining money right now, 300,000. We have some other holes in the budget. The school is asking for about 300,000, a little, almost 400,000 more. We have the 400,000 from the liquor store being a hole in the budget. So I think we've got to be judicious here.
Thank you, Matt. Anybody from the public? Stanley? Yeah,
Dan
no, it's
Wojciechowski
good. The
again.
motion's- No, we're just doing the study.
I looked on page 114 of the agenda, and I don't think we ought to move forward. It looks here, in the average case, we're losing 13,000, and once we get the air conditioning in, we're losing $36,000. So I don't even want to move forward on this project, which is saying we're going to lose 30, in the average case, we're going to lose 36. In a budget case, it's even higher. And then they got a best case situation here, but I'm going to go average. I said, okay, average. But I mean, we're just going a lot deeper in the hole, and significantly deeper in the hole by putting HVAC in. And I don't know what is going to change the venue. Huh? Are you going to tell me we're going to double and triple the amount of people that are going to utilize these facilities to make up that difference? I just don't think so right now. You're not going to have that big a step. You got the towers that eats up all. That's the primary place. That's where my nieces went. They went to the tower. So If the gap wasn't so bad, I say, okay, consider it. But the gap is so bad, I don't want to consider it. Therefore, I don't even want to spend the $30,000 to look at it, because I don't want to spend the $300,000 or more later on. Not at this time. Maybe next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley.
Yeah, I had a question for Tom.
Tom, come on, back up.
So Stanley is correct. Right now, the average loss is,
I'm sorry?
what's the average loss right now per year over there?
Based upon fiscal year 18 numbers, it varies between, I think it's $27,000 if you, that's from top down. That's a budget number.
Right.
I don't think it's based on anything of fact or history. However you build it up, it's around, I think it's around $7,000. And so we've averaged in the analysis to be about a loss of $13,000.
Loss of 13,000, okay. All right. I'm
That's
not
based
on
upon
board.
about 30 weddings per year occupancy.
Right, and if we put in, if we spend 330,000, if we can get an HVAC system at that cost, what would be the recovery time for that?
It's under average conditions, best conditions, about 10-year payback.
10 years.
Right.
That's best case scenario.
That's average case. Best
Average
case would be
case.
about 7, I think.
All right, here, earlier, we have somebody complaining about the town buying a $400,000 commercial building in the pier that nets 40 grand a year. I don't even know why we're discussing putting $330,000 into a building that we lose 13 grand a year. So,
Thank you,
as far,
Patrick.
well, I'm not through yet. As far as Kenny Bungalow, I think we do an RFP, let a private company come in and take it over, and we get a monthly stipend from them and leave that building alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Jeff, did you want to say something? Come on up.
I just want to, just to clarify a couple of things, and it may just be a semantical issue, but the 2015 study that was done was designed to give us a probable estimate of costs to install an HVAC system and to basically identify a couple of different systems types that could be put in. There was not a lot of discussion on the worthiness of the project. The consultant was pretty much neutral on that, recognizing that that's our function, your function, to decide on whether the project is worthy or not. You can make the argument that a building without HVAC may degrade in a different manner than a building does, but you also look at Kinney Bungalow that's been there for over 100 years, and because we've allocated resources to it and done a pretty good job of maintaining it, the building's still there. It's not falling apart because we don't have heat or we don't have air conditioning. So as I understand what the land trust is looking for in this next step, it's not really to answer the question, should we do it? It's to answer the question is, how much will it cost to do this time around? We're basically taking the 2015 report, updating it, and by taking the next step in designing an actual HVAC plan, then we have something that we can go out to bid for and refining the numbers. But it's this process, as I understand Tom's memo, is not designed to answer the question, should we do it? It's designed to answer the question, how much will it cost?
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Karen?
This is not my area of expertise, but I think this is another prime example of how Tom Rogers and his committee have worked very hard on the Kinney Bungalow. And now, Mr. Moretti, I think I understood you that you want to pay somebody to evaluate how much it's going to cost. What about our town? Maybe I misunderstood. What about our town engineer? And I just don't see spending money after that. People don't even want to support the library. Give me a break.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else wishing to speak in the public?
Madam President?
Yes.
May I add something?
Sure.
The question came up about the study of the town assets, the towers, Kinney Bungalow, North Beach Clubhouse. The reason that study has taken a little longer to get to, and it's scheduled for May 7th, I just wanted to add that, was because at the advice of some people on the council, they requested a couple other venues were included in that, the gazebo park, the Veterans Park, and the community center, even though they bring in much less revenue, just to include that in the study. But what I found was in the bookkeeping of looking at all these properties, I was having two separate numbers that really you really couldn't look at and make any sense of it. One was fiscal year and one was calendar year, where the events and the revenue that was coming was compared at two different levels. So I had the person compiling all this for me, get it in one area, which is going to be, I believe, the fiscal year, so this way we can compare apples to apples. But May 7th is the date it should be completed.
Thank you, Jim. So the motion before us that we discussed is, do we want to do the study? And I think that vote will determine if people want to do the installation of the HVAC, correct? President Pro Tem, because you're on the land.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so it's
it's
not that complicated.
Right.
If it doesn't pass, that means the second step's not going to happen, correct? So if you're in favor of the amended motion, which is to do the design study for $30,000, signify by saying aye.
Well, can I say one thing?
Sure.
So like this came up too in other areas that we've dealt with over the years. Sometimes the design study is answering other questions. But in this one, I think the president really hits the nail on the head. If philosophically you don't see the point of moving forward, why spend the 30? So when we voted to budget this back in April, we talked about the physical integrity of the building being a concern, and part of the reason that we budgeted for it was because of that, budgeted for heat and AC. We talked I do remember we talked in detail at our land trust meeting in July of last year about that part of it because there were concerns. And as some of the speakers have mentioned tonight, that when we talked about the land trust level, the physical integrity of the building is not an issue in terms of that we have to put in heat and AC. So just wanted to kind of touch on that because there were two separate things going on there. So thank you.
Matt. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No.
Motion fails 3-2. Thank you. Next, motion 13, a motion to approve the amendment for additional professional engineering services related to the roadway improvement program, Phase 2B amendment, East Shore Road Stormwater with Better Group, Inc., in the total amount of $16,220. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A
Second.
Discussion?
This
Mike?
is about the permitting that Mike talked about
Yeah.
last 2 weeks ago. So
Mike,
this
did
is
you have
example
anything you
of
wanted
that
to
permitting.
add to it? Or no? No, if you don't have any new information, it's fine. Okay. Anybody from the public?
Learman, 24 East Shore Road.
Can you speak into the,
Oh, Robin Learman, 24 East Shore Road.
hi.
I'm the one that usually calls to have this pond pumped because we are here in March, and that tends to be the time that it overflows. We have, I don't know, maybe 10 houses that surround this pond, and it's changed over the years. It's just not what it used to be. It cannot hold water, and the new roads that are going in are not providing drainage for this, so that's not going to help the problem. It's going to make it worse. So we've already given permission. They can go through our yard, they can go through the neighbor's yard. So I'm speaking for all of the neighbors, saying that we really need this overflow put into this pond. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe Mike can expand on that.
Mike, he wants to come up. He was trying to avoid not coming up. She's 4.
Good evening.
Evening.
As the resident was saying, there's a portion of East Shore Road that there was a natural pond encompassed by about 10 residencies. Since the March 2010 floods, that pond has become a nuisance, per se, to the town and to the residents. So what it is, it takes on so much water now that it can't properly drain with sea level rise and the weather that we're having more frequently. The pond can't naturally drain as fast as it used to. So what we're looking to do is install an overflow drainage into our stormwater system that would keep the pond at a natural level, not to affect the residents and the basements and everything that they're having issues with, water coming up to their backyards and back of their houses. And so that's what this is. We're trying to amend this issue before the construction of East Shore Road happens so that we're not trying to go in after and tear up a brand new road to mitigate a stormwater issue.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, I had a question. Is there any plan to do anything with this pond? I mean,
No, it's a pond, but it's not really a pond. We're only talking about like, when it's sitting there natural the way it is now.
Right.
Maybe 2 or 3 feet deep. That's it. But when we have these extreme rainstorms or extreme
Right.
winter storms, the pond now goes to 5 or 6, but comes up on the backyards of the houses like a tidal flow. And
is there any way we can throw in another permit to get a backhoe in there and dig that pond out? Would that help?
I don't know. There's no natural outlet anywhere right now.
Right.
That's the problem. And the water table is,
High.
Unfortunately, water table's rising. And in the town, if you want to say the town's sinking, you can, because sea level rise is
Are there phragmites around that?
Yes, there are.
Yes.
See, phragmites, the problem with phragmites, they drop and they take the bottom of that pond. Like 20 years ago, that might have been 4 feet deep.
Right.
And they're phragmites.
But now the phragmites are there, and they're
Yeah.
taking it over, so.
Can we dig that out? Go in there and dig that out? If this lady lets us cross?
It's private property carved up between the homeowners. I mean, I don't know how much the town really wants to take on.
Well, if this,
How about if you look into it, Mike?
yeah, maybe look into it where we could get an agreement from these folks. I mean, I think the simple solution is just
Patrick,
dig it out a little bit.
Possibly, we can look at it.
why don't you, thank you,
Very
Mike. Okay, motion 13. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 14, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment, Chapter 6 in the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Animals, Article 4, Farm Animals, Section 6-79, Roosters. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. I actually put this on many meetings ago, and then there was a modification to 1 rooster, and I just want to say that I'm going to go back to my original stance on this motion. The request was to restrict roosters in the residential zones in Narragansett, and I wanted to contain the hens so they weren't running the streets. I'm not satisfied with the amendment. I thought about it. I spoke to the very concerned woman that has been trying to have a quality of life, and 1 rooster does not satisfy what the restrictions should have been. So I'm going to actually vote against the motion that I put on, because I was trying to go with 1 rooster, but I think it's not solving the problem. It's a Band-Aid or kicking the can down the road. So I can either withdraw it or we can vote on it,
Well,
because I'm not satisfied with 1 rooster.
I don't think we gave it a chance. I mean, this is the second reading.
So
I
if you
don't
want
think
to,
the
do you want to vote
roosters
on it?
got notified.
So that's my stand on it. I put it on. It's
First reading,
completely
yeah.
different than what I originally started with.
It's really up to you, since it's your motion.
So, all right, we'll
Whatever you
vote on
wanna
it.
do.
All those, you guys,
Well, so wait a minute.
So
If you're concerned about this read, maybe there's a better solution that you can come up with and put it on the.
I have tried.
Okay.
I have tried, and I have explained the ordinance, and it has changed from no roosters in a residential zone to 1, to containment, to no containment. It has become everything that I've worked so hard to put together. It's not. So at this point, when I thought about it last night, I'm like, this is not what I originally wanted, 1 rooster in the residential zone. So I'm going to vote against it.
So what are you proposing then, to take it all the way off?
I'm just saying, this wasn't what we were trying to get at. There was an amendment the last meeting that Patrick threw out that said, well, we can have 1 rooster.
Okay.
It was more about the quality of life issues. 1 rooster or 2, they're as noisy, it doesn't matter, 1 or 2. The issue was, I wanted to talk about containment. They're walking all over the town, in Metatuxet, Priggs Farm, all different areas, and it was about, you want to have them, keep them on your property, and don't disrupt me.
So what are you proposing that it say now?
This motion is saying 1 rooster, and I'm saying I don't agree with that.
So you're saying no roosters at all?
Yeah, I'm going back. What I'm saying is my original premise,
Okay.
which I brought to this council,
Okay.
which didn't have any muster, that's where I stand.
So you want to re-amend the amendment?
No, I'm just going to say, I think this is not what I originally
So I
wanted.
have a suggestion. So aren't you the affected party? Can you come to the podium for a second?
Say again?
Does it matter that I actually come to the podium?
Yeah, no, because we're in the middle of talking about the
So-
motion, so you have to hold on until we finish,
Okay.
we decide.
So my,
what the-
sorry. My suggestion, if it were me, I'll just tell you what I would do. If you're not satisfied, I would pull this and start over and make sure that the remedy was exactly the way you wanted it, and that she got the best remedy. I mean, if one rooster, I mean, I'm thinking you could start with one rooster. I would vote yes for this motion. But if you're not satisfied, then maybe you should revisit it.
I'm not, so I can actually, again, I was trying to get something through this council that I thought would be satisfactory, but when I thought about it, it was so far away from what I originally brought to this council in full detail. So I can't compromise on all the important things like the quality of life and the, you know, the idea that they should be contained.
Right.
It just,
Well-
it's so I'll pull it. I'll just pull it. I just wanted to be clear with the public that I still stand with my original ordinance, which was to restrict roosters to residential zones, to contain them for lots of reasons, and unfortunately, in the sitting council, I could not get that done. So I'll pull it.
All right, wait a minute. Let me, okay. All right, I guess I'm the guardian of the roosters here. We have an ordinance that actually says no bovine on the sidewalks. I've been saying that for 2 weeks. My kids are saying, what are you talking about? Bovine on the sidewalks. Okay, so in the event, if I'm driving down a road and I see a cow standing on a sidewalk, all right, that's it. All cows have to leave Narragansett. We got one complaint on
Maybe
a
another
rooster
council will approve it.
and on some chickens. There are two roosters there. The solution to me is very simple, have one rooster. If there's a continued complaint, like a barking dog, if we have a barking dog, are we going to get rid of all dogs?
Okay, Patrick, I'm going to pull the motion. Apparently, this council is not interested in it. I wanted to let the public know,
Okay.
the
What do you
people
think?
out there that have been concerned, who have contacted me, that maybe in the future, another council may take another look at the quality of life and restricting the roosters. But this sitting council has made it very clear that it's not a high priority, and that's fine. So I'm going to pull it, and we're going to move on to the next.
The woman in the front row would like to speak.
I just pulled it.
Well, let us speak.
It's pulled.
Okay.
I'm going to move on, sorry, it's not
I'm
up for
happy to meet with
discussion.
you after the meeting and hear what you have to say.
Okay. Okay, moving on. 15, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment, Chapter 731, and the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, text revisions to Section 11.3 and Section 22.1, requirements of the public hearing and notice public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a name? Is it Mary Jane Gray? Oh, I'm sorry. Public hearing, is there a date for that? For 15? For 15, I have a motion and a second. Is there a public hearing date on that?
No, this is the first reading of what we passed.
First
right?
reading of that text revision. That was the
This is from you, Mike. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
think there may be a
I
little
got all wound
confusion.
up in my roosters and aggravated.
Yep, sorry about that.
It's okay.
There's no
I'm moving
bovine
on.
on the sidewalks either for
All
anybody
right,
who's paying
moving on.
attention.
Go ahead.
This is merely the first reading of the ordinance that amends the certified mailing requirements.
I voted for that. I remember that clearly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody from the public wishing to speak?
Discussion.
Sue?
Okay.
Hi, Sue Bush, 65 Robinson Street. I have a question on this one. I read the background information, but it wasn't clear to me if people are notified at their permanent addresses, if they're not year-round residents. I just want to make sure that people who aren't year-round have adequate time to be notified of something happening in the neighborhood and to appear for a public meeting if they so desire. Thanks.
Good question.
Unfortunately, Madam President, under the state law, tenants who do not own the properties are not the notified individuals. So if the owner of the property lives in Schenectady or Botswana, that's where the mail is going to go. So when a public hearing is coming up on a subdivision or a zoning case,
and the property owner lives out of state, that certificate of mailing and the mail itself will go to that individual's permanent address, the owner's permanent address. The tenant does not get notified.
Thank you. Karen?
I take big issue with the whole thing in general. I think they ought to advertise it in the newspaper. I think if you only have to notify people within 200 or 250 feet, there are other people in the neighborhood that are definitely impacted, and they don't even know what's going on. And you can't assume that everybody runs to their computer and looks at what's going on at the Monday night meeting of the town council. This is craziness, and I think you all talk about transparency. I think the town council meeting should be advertised, and I think this whole thing about whether you're 200 feet or 250 feet, you spent about 25 minutes on it the last time. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, Karen. Mike? Let him speak to him.
Again, Madam President, under state law, when there is a zone change that comes to this body, or a zoning variance, or a special use permit, and even subdivisions of land under the
Goes
planning
in the
board,
paper.
there is a notification in the newspaper.
Thank you.
Well in advance, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks, depending on different form of relief.
Okay, thank you. Karen, did you hear that? It's all set. Perfect. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Just for Sue Bush's question, this, if you weren't here the last meeting, this is removing the requirement for a signature for certified mailing from the recipient, Sue. So that's what this is doing.
Anybody else wishing to speak on the motion? Just a second. All those in favor from the council?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
3-2, motion passes. 16, a motion to confirm the appointment of an individual to the pension board as representative of the school department to fill an unexpired 2-year term to expire on November 1st, 2018. Do I have a motion?
Move to confirm the appointment of Mary Jane Gray.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 17, a motion to approve the use of the council chambers and camera equipment access for the live coverage for the 5 Meet the Candidates Night, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of South County. Do I have a motion?
Already?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So those are for upcoming council for Narragansett, South Kingston. They'll be televised. They'll be here in the chambers. And as soon as and the school committee, and we'll know the dates.
Well, the dates are on there, so
Will you put them up so people in the public know?
Can I say something about this one? In the pursuit of transparency, one of the dates is Halloween. So I think we should make an effort to talk to the League of Women Voters. And I don't know if the Halloween night is going to be a night that people are going to be listening to politicians debate. So I'm just saying, I'll talk to Ann. I'll try to reach out to the League of Women. I think that's going to be a tough night, regardless of if it's town council, state senate, whatever school committee, whatever night that's slated for Halloween. So
Thank you.
there are 4 other nights, so hopefully they can get everything on
Matt,
the other 4 nights.
It's just about the scheduling. Karen, do you have a question about the scheduling?
Right.
Because
I
that's
beg
all
to
we're
differ.
doing. We're just booking the cameras. You can't talk to anything other than that.
Pat likes
Well, it
Halloween.
is a schedule.
All right.
I think October
No,
30th.
Karen, go ahead.
Breathe in the red, white, and blue, but when you had the last election, the Meet the Candidates nights were crazy. There was, one at the senior, no, but I'm just saying they ought to have
This is about the scheduling, the
of the
chamber,
League
yes.
of Women Voters.
Yes.
What I'm saying is extend those, have those for longer, so that everybody gets asked the same questions, and not have one sponsored by the landlord
that's-
and the property owners
Thank you.
association.
As Matt said about Halloween, that's about the scheduling, okay?
We can
Yeah.
if they agree, we can change that date,
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Well, we'll have to talk to them and see.
Okay.
All right.
Pretty scary candidates. I think Halloween's appropriate.
Anybody from the public wishing to speak on the scheduling?
Anybody can.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes, and a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go
Good night.
Villanova.
Yikes.